If your brand belongs in the heart of the yachting world, this is where it happens. Yachting International Radio reaches over 1 million yachting professionals and enthusiasts every month, with 77 million impressions, 220,000 social followers, and 74,000 podcast subscribers. Our hosts are insiders, crew, captains, CEOs, trusted voices shaping the industry. This is targeted, high-impact advertising in a luxury niche. Visit yachtinginternationalradio.com/advertise. Your audience is already listening.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Rich as Fuck podcast, the show where we talk about yachting, money, life, investing, and all things in between. Today I have the honor of sitting down with Jamie Hadley-Grave. Grave.
Jamie Hadley-Grave, yeah.
There's a spelling error on his own Zoom, so that's his fault.
Oh, that's crazy. I don't use Zoom. I'm a Teams guy. I use Teams and Google. So I quickly downloaded Zoom before this one.
He's a very well-known force to be reckoned with in the South African tax yachty niche. So we've been working together lately. I'm really happy to call him a partner as part of my yachting investor ecosystem. And today we want to do what all people dread, and that is taxes. And for yachties, this is going to be full of actionable insights and advice from an actual tax professional. So you no longer have to take my word for it. It's coming straight from the horse's mouth. Welcome, Jamie. Good morning.
Thank you, Charl. Pleasure to be here.
Yes. How is Cape Town treating you?
Cape Town is good. It's midwinter now, but yeah, sunny day today. So you brought the sun with you virtually. Your side, how are things there?
Yeah, wonderful. Definitely miss home every now and then, but I'm very blessed to live a nice life in California post-yachting.
Awesome, man. Yeah, well, California and Cape Town, there are quite a lot of similarities, eh? That's what they say.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us, Jamie, those that don't know you, tell us a bit about yourself and exactly what you do.
Cool, guys. So yeah, my real name is James Christopher Hadley-Grave, but I do go by Jamie. So Jamie Hadley-Grave is my name. And yeah, I'm a registered chartered accountant and tax practitioner. So I've climbed that mountain of board exams and university and all that kind of stuff. So got the credentials to back up my knowledge. And yeah, so when I finish my articles, which for those of you who don't know, it's like compulsory 3-year training with board exams and stuff for accountants. And you have to go through it before you can start practicing publicly. Once I qualified there, there are multiple ways to climb a corporate ladder. And I thought, I actually think I want to start my own thing. So I started Hadley-Grave Accounting Tax. And it's now 3-4 years since I started. And my first client was a yachty. And he started this whole thing off. And now I've somehow become the yachty tax expert, if I can say it like that. My clients will back me up when I say that. So yeah, but cool. Yeah, that's a brief introduction of me and how I came into this industry, I guess.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for what you do. And yeah, I'm also really trying to spread the word in the industry that just because we have certain exemptions as South African seafarers does not mean it disqualifies you from your duties and obligations of being a good citizen.
Exactly. Yachties don't pay a tax.
There we go.
True, but can be true, but there's a very specific process you need to follow. So we'll get into that.
Awesome. I'm excited to dive into it. So first things first, I want to tell you my perspective of it as an ex-seafarer of 7 to 8 years. The way I see it, and this is a very low-level layman's terms summary, there are 2 things applicable to us as South African seafarers. Number 1, being the expat exemption. I'm not that much of a nerd to memorize the code of section 1011, but the expat exemption, which yachties form a part of it, but is not specifically created for us, because this is all South African residents or tax-paying citizens that are earning foreign income abroad. They qualify for this exemption if they spend more than 183 days outside of the country, of which 60 of those days are consecutive, at least 60 of those days are consecutive, and they get capped. They don't have to pay income tax on the first 1.25 million rand they earn.
Yeah.
That's the first one that I am aware of that most yachties seem to know about. However, The second one, the Seafarer's exemption, that's the real kicker here. Same rules hold. You only qualify for it when you spend more than 183 days outside of the country, of which 60 of those days are consecutive.
So quick one there. For Seafarer exemption, there's no 60 days continuous, but I'll add my comments after. Yeah.
There we go. Good to know. And this is people that get compensated for the movement of passengers or goods and services across the ocean. And if you qualify under this exemption, your full income can be exempt. I know this one because I worked on a charter vessel for 5 years.
Yes.
I got audited many years by SARS, but every time I provided them with the correct paperwork, which was the Private Yacht Limited Charter Certificate in my case for this flag state I worked for.
Mm-hmm.
And I was earning well above the threshold and I never had to pay income tax. So I wanted to preface the conversation with that because that's my perspective. Lay it on me.
Yeah. So I was thinking for this, let's talk about each exemption, obviously. Let's look at the tax wording that I pretty much know off by heart, maybe a bit of paraphrasing there. Let's break it down in English, and then we can apply it to real life scenarios or whatnot.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Should we do expat or Seafarer first? Should we start with expat?
Start with expat.
Seafarer, which one?
Expat.
Okay, let's start with expat. Okay, so maybe let's just premise this with talking about tax residency, or should we maybe because that's like a okay. So paying tax in South Africa, okay, it mainly comes down to tax residency. Are you regarded as an SA tax resident or not? Because if you are regarded as an SA tax resident, you are taxed on your worldwide income. So what that means is that you are taxed on money that you make in South Africa, but also you taxed on money that you make outside South Africa. However, whereas if you are a non-SA tax resident, you only taxed on money that you make in South Africa. Okay, so let's just quickly think of yachties. Most yachties are outside of South Africa, earning money outside of South Africa. So if they are SA tax residents, SARS has a right to tax them on that money. But if they're not SA tax residents, they aren't taxed on that money because they are not SA tax resident. Okay, so let's quickly talk about tax residency. There are two main ways SARS defines this or can classify people as an SA tax resident. Let's talk about the first one, ordinarily resident. Are you ordinarily resident? Okay, so most South Africans are born in SA and they would consider South Africa their home. You know, it's so SARS will weigh up, is South Africa your true home? But in between seasons of yachting, where do you come back to? Where's your family? Where's your personal interests? Where's your house? All that kind of stuff. So you're usually by default ordinarily tax resident, and therefore you pay tax on your worldwide income. You're a South African citizen, your house is here, your family is here, this is where you return to, okay? Then if you then decide, okay, no, I want to cease to be ordinarily tax resident, what you can do is declare to SARS that you cease to be ordinarily resident, and we can maybe talk about that in detail later on. Mm. Once that process has gone through, then you will not be considered ordinarily resident. And the only way you can be resident for South African tax purposes is the physical presence test. Okay? Yep. The physical presence test is you need to spend 91 days in the preceding 5 years, or a total of, I think it's 915 or 935. I may be getting the exact numbers wrong. Yep. To be regarded as an ordinary SA tax resident. So, but yeah, 95% of the time, all yachties are ordinarily tax resident for South Africa. So therefore, they have to pay tax on their worldwide income. And as I said, that means yachting taxes, overseas income, and South African income. Okay. Understood. So I guess that's why we're here in the first place, because most yachties are ordinary resident. So yes, SARS can tax you on that money you make overseas. All right. So that is like the preamble. So now let's dive into the expat exemption. Okay. Yeah. So two main requirements here, how I see it. Requirement number one, obviously tax residency is a requirement, but two additional main requirements that I often use when I'm explaining it to clients. Okay. Requirement number one is that you need to be out of South Africa for more than 183 days over a 12-month period, including a period of 60 days continuous. All right. So let's break that down a little bit. 183 days. All right. That equates to 6 months in English, pretty much. Well, plus minus, but we can say 6 months you need to be out the country. Okay. Of that 6 months, there needs to be a period of at least 60 days continuous, which 2 months. So of the 6 month period that you're out the country, you need to be out of the country for at least 2 months in a row of the 183 days or 6 month period. And it's a minimum of 183 days or 6 months. So let's just refer to it as 183 days because that's the correct wording. Okay. And then also what's nice about the expat exemption is it's any 12-month period. So usually a tax year runs, well, let's quickly talk about a calendar year. A calendar year runs January to December. Yep. A tax year runs March to February. In South Africa, runs March to February. So usually the default pillar post for your 12 months out the country or the 12-month period is the 1st of March, 2020. Let's do this year. 1st of March, 2026 to 28th of Feb, 2027. So there are 364 days between March and Feb. All right. Yep. So basically, SARS says that you need to be out of the country for 183 days of the 364 days between March and Feb, including a period of 60 days continuous. Okay. However, the wording for the expat exemption is actually 183 days over any 12-month period. So technically, the expat exemption is not locked between March and Feb. So what is quite nice there is, let's say a yachty in their first year only goes overseas in October. So usually it would be October, November, December, January, February. Right, 5 months. You're not going to be out of the country for 183 days in 5 months. But the expat exemption says it's any 12-month period. So technically, you can start your 12-month period from October 2026 to October 2027. So it's slightly more lenient on the days out the country. But yes, but for all intents and purposes, most yachties are usually out the country very easily, 8 months eight months at a time, plus. So the only time where it's maybe relevant is if someone's on a 2-2 rotation, they just want to make sure that they are 183 plus 1 plus 2, be on the safe side, and at least 60-day continuous at least once. Not 59, not 58, 60. Yeah.
So that would look in practical terms, a yachty on 2-2 rotation, maybe one of your 2-month rotating breaks, you go for a month's vacation after your month contract, just to be safe and make sure that you are outside of the country for that 60 continuous days. Got it.
Yes, exactly. And also, so you've actually just answered my next point, but basically a lot of clients ask me, Jamie, for the days out of the country, do I have to be working or can I actually be on holiday? The answer is you can be on holiday. You just have to be, for this first requirement, you just have to be out of South Africa. You can be in Lesotho, you can be in Mozambique, you can be in Bali, wherever you are. As long as you're out of the borders of South Africa, you are out the country.
Good.
And then I've kind of answered this already, but another question I get is, Jamie, does it have to be 183 days in a row? And I did mention this earlier. It doesn't have to be 183 days in a row. It's just out of the 364 days between March and Feb, or any 12-month period that you choose for the expat exemption, it's 183 days in total of the 364 days, including a period of 60 days continuous. All right.
All clear on the expat exemption. Let's do Seafarer's exemption.
Wait, so expat exemption part 1. Now we're going to do part 2.
Got it.
Okay, part 1. So expat exemption, requirement number 1, we're just going to say it again. Requirement number 1, expat exemption, you need to be out of the country for 183 days over any 12-month period, including a period of 60 days continuous. Part 1. Part 2 is basically you need to be earning foreign employment income, to say it simply. Okay, so the main thing here is, employment income is the main thing here. You need to be employed overseas to get the expat exemption. Mm-hmm. You can't be an independent contractor or work for yourself. So maybe we'll touch on this again towards the end, but you need to be employed. You need to have a boss and you need to earn a salary to get the expat exemption. And just a quick note on the expat exemption, it's not just for yachties, it's for any South African who's working abroad. As you can be an accountant in Paris, you can be a teacher in Thailand, you can be a deckhand, a stewardess, or steward or a chef in the Mediterranean on the yachts. As long as you're employed and you're out of the country and you meet, as I said, the first requirement, which is the days out the country, you're good. Gotcha. Okay, now you meet those 2 requirements, 1.25 million rand of your taxable income is tax exempt.
Got it.
Okay, cool. So let's just quickly put it in, let's do a scenario here. Let's say you earn 2 million rand and you have to use the expat exemption. The 2 million rand that you earn, which includes salary and tips. People sometimes think tips aren't taxable. Tips are taxable. So we can bring that up again later and I can explain why.
Yep.
But salary and tips, let's say, the salary and tips up to 2 million rand this yachty made. Okay. It meets the requirements for the expat exemption. 1.25 million rand is exempt. So 2 million rand minus 1.25 million rand is 750,000 rand. Mm-hmm. So of the 2 million rand that they make, SARS can only tax them on the 750,000 rand.
Got it. Okay. Now that 750, is that then their net income for the year? And that is their marginal tax bracket that they get taxed in? Or how does that work?
Yes, so that 750 will be taxed at the marginal tax rates. Okay, so basically, it's not to like about 250 or 300,000 rand. I can't remember it now, but it's 18%, and then it goes up to 26, 31, and so on. But starting scale, exactly. Yeah. One thing I should maybe mention here is there is something called a primary rebate. So every South African gets about 17,000 rand off their tax, which equates to about, if you take 17,000 rand divided by 18%, which is the lowest tax rate, it comes to about 95,000. So there's an additional small exemption or rebate of about 95,000 rand on top of the 1.25 million. So it's about 1.25 plus 95. So it's just a little additional thing, but 1.25 will be the mark.
Okay, great. That's a very thorough explanation. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Maybe just a laugh hack I can also mention here, and you can back me up as you're the one who does the investing side. I'm just a tax practitioner. I don't give any financial advice. So please, this is not financial advice, but one way to get your taxes down legally is contributing to a retirement annuity. So retirement annuity contributions are tax deductible, and you can contribute, I think, a maximum of, it's 27.5% of your total income, or it's about 435,000. I think the limit just increased. So that is the maximum you can put into your retirement annuity, which is tax deductible. So let's say, you're earning 1.5 million rand and you don't want to pay tax. What you can do is put 200,000 rand into your retirement annuity, make yourself rich for retirement, avoid paying SARS, and you're good to go. So life hack there.
Good. Okay. A side note there for my listeners, I'm quite vocal about how I feel about RAs, but I'm not referring to the mechanics of it. I think the mechanics are wonderful, and the fact that you can have tax deferrals versus SARS. I just don't like certain of the investment funds I see people invested into. So you kind of have to be able to do the cost-benefit analysis of, is this tax write-off worth me putting it into X fund? And
yes,
I only see the horror cases where people come to me for help and guidance and say, hey, have a look at what I'm invested in. So everyone, listen to what Jamie says, but pinch of salt to make sure you don't just select any RA.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that's why you go to someone who's licensed and give you proper advice there.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the tax mechanics.
I'm also not a financial advisor, so everyone, you remember the spiel on the show. Not financial tax advice. This is purely educational and informative.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, Seafarer's exemption.
Brilliant. Okay, Seafarer exemption. Okay, so this is the nice one. You meet the requirements of the Seafarer exemption. Untaxed. Salary, tips, completely untaxed. You make 10 million rand for the year. That full 10 million rand, as long as it's earned in the capacity as a seafarer and, you meet the requirements of the Seafarer exemption, uncapped. There's tax-free. SARS cannot touch it. All right.
Music to my ears.
So now, exactly. Let's dive into it, okay? So 2 main requirements again. Requirement number 1, okay? You need to be out of the country for more than 183 days in a tax year, okay? Mm-hmm. So let's just quickly look at the expat exemption. 183 days over any 12-month period, including a period of 60 days continuous, whereas the Seafarer exemption is 183 days between March and Feb, for a tax year, which is between March and Feb. Okay, so Seafarer exemption is locked between March and Feb. Those are your pillar points. So if you are yachting for the first time in October and you're leaving for the first time in South Africa, by the time October gets to Feb, it's only 5 months, which is short of 183. For that year, for your starting year, you won't meet the requirements of the Seafarer exemption. You can use expat, so because we can shuffle the days around, but Seafarer is strict. March, Feb, there's no moving it around. The 364 days or 65 days, if it's a leap year, between March and Feb, you need to be out of the country for 183 plus one, let's be safe, between March and Feb each year. 1st of March to the 28th of Feb.
Okay, so that's my first big difference that I never knew about. The expat exemption, any rolling 12-month period, Seafarer's exemption, hard stop on the end of Feb to beginning of March.
Yes. And last thing also, so it's one last thing there is it's no 60 days continuous. You can comfortably on a 1-1 rotation, a 2-2 rotation, you don't need to worry about, the 60 days continuous, but you do need to make sure you're hitting the 183 between March and Feb.
Gotcha. Great. Okay. What else can you tell us about the Seafarer's exemption?
Awesome. Now we get to the fun part, or the distinguishable, as in why can't all yachties use the Seafarer exemption? Okay, so let's just use I'm going to work comment number 2. Let's talk about the tax wording. Okay, paraphrasing here slightly, but it goes something along the lines of this. Okay, you need to be an officer or crew member on a ship that's engaged in the international transportation of passengers or goods in exchange for reward. Okay, let's break it down.
Yes.
You need to be an officer or crew member on a ship. Okay, so we can delve into that, but basically most of the time, deckhand, steward, stewardess, chef, captain, all those positions count. We can dive into more as, what is a crew member, who is excluded from that. But if you are employed on the ship and you are part of the crew, you meet that requirement. Okay, so
I think an easy way for listeners if you have an SEA, if you have a Seafarer's Employment Agreement, you have a contract with the ship, whether it's directly with the owner or a management company. I think, if I'm not mistaken, if you have a Seafarer's Employment Agreement, you will fall under...
As a crew, yes. I agree with you. My interpretation is that.
Okay,
brilliant. So you need to be an officer or crew member on a ship engaged in the international transportation of passengers in exchange for reward. Okay, so so it's passengers or goods. We're going to ignore goods because yachties, the super yachts transport passengers, so not really goods most of the time. So you need to be an officer or crew member on a ship engaged in the international transportation of passengers in exchange for reward. So basically, the ship must have the ability or the intention to have guests, and those guests must be paying money to be there. Or there must be some sort of, let's say, commercial use where there is money being exchanged on the yacht. The vessel is almost like a business. It's a trade. There's a fair paying service. There's a fair paying monetary value to the use of the vessel. So let's talk about charters, right? Charters meet this requirement. There is money being exchanged. However, private vessels, okay, the owner of a private vessel usually has their friends and family on his yacht or her yacht for free. There's no fair paying substance happening. So that is the key.
Which disqualifies.
Okay. Yes. And I'm just the messenger. Yeah. So,
No, but I think this is a common misconception because also the terminology we use is very loose in yachting. You will tell your buddy, hey, we pick up charter next week, but that charter is just your boss's cousin. It's not.
Yes.
It's not a paying charter. They haven't signed an advance payment approval. They haven't done anything that commercially qualifies this as a business transaction. So you're not a charter yachty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So how I often also just explain it, well, the last part of the word is in exchange for reward. If you substitute the word money, in exchange for money, essentially, is this yacht carrying passengers for money, for reward? Yes. That's kind of the crux of it. Okay. And then maybe it's a good time to bring this up. Question I get, if my private vessel is commercially registered, does it count? Okay. I think I'm jumping ahead here, but...
Great point. Let's go.
Great thing. Okay. So having a vessel commercially registered is not good enough. Okay. SARS's rule or principle in the Income Tax Act is substance over form. It can be registered as a commercial vessel, but what are the vessel's day-to-day activities? So is it being commercially used or is it being privately used? If there's a bit of a mix, okay, so let's say the vessel is a private vessel, but then it does charters where money is being exchanged, okay? That then becomes a gray area. So there's not an interpretation note on this, but what we would then do is we'd look at what evidence we can gather and look at the activities. If we can prove to SARS that this vessel is engaged in charter activities or commercial activities, then there's a leg to stand on. And I would be probably comfortable with submitting this as a Seafarer exemption and seeing how SARS go. And we can talk about the evidence maybe in a little bit. What is the best evidence to use for each exemption?
Yep.
But where it's a gray area, your evidence, your supporting documents is your best friend. Because how it works in the income tax or with SARS, in the Income Tax Act, one of the principles, again, is the burden of proof lies with the taxpayer. Okay, so it's the taxpayer's job to prove to SARS that they meet the requirements of an exemption, either the Seafarer or the expat. SARS aren't just going to believe you, okay? Yeah. I'm a yachty, I qualify for the expat exemption, I don't pay tax. SARS are not going to believe you. They want evidence, okay? So this is where, a tax practitioner like myself comes into use because, we've been through a couple audits. We know which documents SARS are looking for. We know which evidence is strong, which is weak. So, that's what me and my team do. We gather all the evidence for yachties and then they can chill, focus on their careers. We'll take care of their tax and make sure they're being tax efficient.
Awesome.
Cool. All right, so those are the two exemptions in a nutshell. So, I'll hand back over to you. And then, a couple of things I want to bring up, but I think they'll come up in your questions. So we can go forward.
Well, thank you. That's a very thorough explanation. And I can't wait to turn all of this into little nuggets of wisdom that we can share with the folk.
Brilliant.
Again, remember, everyone, no one's telling you to do anything. This is just a tax practitioner speaking of experience and an ex-yachty speaking of his experience. So you kind of get to have both sides of the fireside chat. I'm going to hit you with a few questions based on what you just said. Okay?
Perfect.
You've already mentioned the burden of proof part, that the onus of that is on the taxpayer or the non-taxpayer. So how exactly... And this is not just applicable to the charter yachties. This is to any commercial shipping. So whether you work on the rigs, the other day I had someone reach out to me who's a dive instructor on a commercial boat in Thailand. What are some type of forms of evidence that you can gather to give to SARS to help you justify your point for the seafarer's exemption?
Okay. So when it comes to the evidence, so at the moment we're talking about the Seafarer exemption let's just do it like this, okay? So the expat exemption, there are three main proofs I like to give to SARS. For the Seafarer, I use those same proofs, but then if SARS asks further, then we look at how can we prove that this vessel is commercial? Okay, or the commercial use. And maybe just a quick note on the dive instructor scenario, okay?
Yes.
The main thing for the dive instructor of how that comes about is the dive instructor part of the crew. Most of the time, dive instructors work for themselves or work for a dive instructing company. They are not part of the crew of the ship, and therefore they fail both. They're not employed under the expat exemption, and then for the Seafarer exemption, then they're not part of the crew. So
Understood.
maybe just a quick nugget there is that you must be part of that ship's crew. Okay.
Got it.
So for the expat exemption and the Seafarer exemption, there are three main proofs, okay, that this is how my practice do it. That we start off with these three proofs, and then we submit to SARS, and then we let SARS take it from there. If they want further evidence, we will then, we sometimes go on a wild goose chase. But these are the main three things that I use in my practice, okay?
Okay.
So let's start off with the first one, proof of days out the country. Okay. Yeah. How do you prove to SARS that you have been out of the country for 183 days?
Passport stamps.
No matter exactly, passport stamps.
Yeah.
Any other guesses? There are multiple ways to prove things.
I-94 in the US showing your entries in and outside of the country, flight confirmations, visa expirations.
Yes.
Yeah, those are top of mind.
Okay, perfect. So basically your passport is your strongest evidence. Your passport has all your stamps, okay? Now, a question I get now is, Jamie, Europe, everything's electronic. What am I going to do about my taxes? So SARS have said, we don't care about international stamps. Well, my experience with SARS is we want to see the South African stamps. Your international
coming
stamps.
back and the leaving. Yes.
Yes, they want to see entering in South Africa and coming back, entering South Africa and leaving South Africa.
Yeah.
So if all yachties can please, just going forward, get those physical stamps, because, in South Africa, there's no R19. You can't get your scans in and out of South Africa like America. It goes into the abyss, as far as I can tell. I've tried to get these scans as proof. We can't get it. It's not accessible to the public or to tax practitioners, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
So if yachties can get that physical stamp for me, that would be great. Because that obviously, it just makes evidence easier. And also, in South Africa, they are doing this e-gate thing. Thank goodness, half the time it doesn't work. So you have to get the physical stamp, but you want to get those physical stamps. It makes your tax easier. Because if a stamp is missing, what can we use? Then we can use flight details or your seaman's discharge book, but SARS regards that as weak evidence. How do they know you got on the flight? Sometimes it can be as ridiculous as sending a selfie of yourself on the flight. Hopefully you took one. Another thing is your seaman's discharge book. You signed onto the vessel and signed off the vessel, but then you might have to prove that the vessel didn't come to South Africa. So your passport, your strongest evidence for the 183 days. So passports, guys, look after your passports. Don't lose them. Don't drop them in the water. Keep them safe. And how I work with my clients is, send me photos of your passport. I'll keep it safe for you on my side. You don't have to worry about it. So your passport can get stolen. I've got your stamps safe.
Gotcha.
Okay. So, and then I know you asked a question about the commercial. I'll get to there. I think I just want to go through the 3 proofs and then we'll talk about.
All good.
Okay, perfect. So proof number one is 183 days out the country. As I've said, passport, your best. Flights, seaman's discharge book, visa, R19, that all helps, but your passport is the best. Okay. Second thing we need to proof of employment, okay? 2 things we can use here. One is obviously your strongest, your signed employment contract. Don't give me an unsigned one.
Yeah.
Signed employment contract, okay?
Yeah.
This proves that, the signed employment contract has who the yacht owner is. Usually it actually has their, if it's, private vessel or charter vessel. As I mentioned before, commercial vessel. Sometimes SARS will then ask further on the commercial status. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But, it has your yacht employment company, your crew employment company. It has your role, your descriptions, you're part of the crew. It has all those details. So your proof of employment contract. So basically, for every vessel you work on, you need a proof of employment. Your employment contract is obviously, your signed employment contract is obviously the best. But what we can also use, like I know in the first year of yachting, they say, Jamie, I don't have that contract, okay? Or those contracts. The minimum we need is a reference letter or a captain's letter, something along the lines of, this person was employed on this yacht as a deckhand for this period, signed by captain with the contact details stamp. That has worked before, but your employment contract is your best. So for every vessel you've worked on, guys, we need evidence that you worked on that vessel.
Gotcha.
So documentation is your best friend. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Now the third thing, okay? The third main thing, so a proof of income. Because you are essentially applying for an exemption, if I can say you're applying for an exemption, let me say it like that. SARS wants to know how much money are you actually applying to get exempt, okay? Yeah. So it's obviously relevant, very relevant for the expat exemption because there's a cap of 1.25 million rand. But even for the Seafarer exemption, they want to know how much money, I guess, they're missing out on. So 2 things we can use here. Either payslips, if you get payslips and your payslips has your gratuity and your salary, then, that's brilliant. Send me your payslips. But if you don't have payslips, which is the case sometimes, we can use your bank statement or your Wise account or your Standard Bank offshore. Some yachties, especially if you're catching on 4 years, they just send me their whole Wise account for the past 4 years. Me and my team, we go through, we highlight, okay, tip, salary, we add it all up. See if it's under the limit, if it's expat, if it's Seafarer, we don't need to, there's no limit, but we still need to declare, cool, this yachty, 1.5 million rand, salary and tips. Here's the proof of income. which is pay slips or bank statements. Here's the employments for the, let's say you worked on 2 vessels. Here's the employment contract for the 2 vessels, both charter. And then here is the proof of days out of the country. Here's his passport stamps. And let's say he's missing a stamp. Here's the flight to prove for the missing stamp. That is essentially how it works. So we gather that evidence. So me and my team usually gather that on behalf of, well, we compile it. You send it to me, we'll then put it into a format that's understandable for SARS. Yeah. We compile a schedule of all your yachting income and then document it, proof of income, proof of employment, proof of days out the country. Okay, now to your question. Okay, but so if you are working on a commercial vessel and SARS wants to challenge that status, prove to us that it's a commercial vessel. So in my experience, this hasn't really happened to me. So at the moment, they've just been accepting the contracts that I submit. Yeah. But if there's a lot of income being exempt, then they want to see proof of commercial use or proof of trade, essentially. And that is whatever you can get. You mentioned that in your example, what did you use?
With commercial?
When you were in a charter vessel, sorry, what did you use for evidence there? I think you mentioned something.
Private yacht limited charter certificate.
There we go. So that's proof that it's being used for commercial reasons, essentially. Correct. What you could get is a letter from the owner or from the captain stating that it's used for commercial. But SARS they want proof. Sometimes, if there's a schedule of booked trips, a booking statement for the year, a booking statement for the year showing all the paid trips that are booked, and that there's someone that manages the trips and all that kind of stuff. That all works. But on my experience, in my experience, they've been accepting those 3 proofs for now. They have the right to challenge on any of those. If they want to challenge the commercial status or the spiritual status, they have the right to ask for more. But as far as I can tell, those 3 documents for now are all we need.
I agree with that. The one year where I ran into like a little bit of more than a normal hurdle was after I got audited. That year I acquired 2 rental properties. My taxes were slightly more complex than the previous years, and whatever it may be, whether it was luck or the draw, or I seemed suspicious, I got really zoomed in on. They accepted the private yacht limited charter certificate in the 2 prior years, but that year they wanted more. So the captain actually gave me permission to reach out to some of the charter clients and asked if they were comfortable with me sharing information from the ship's logbook. Because within the logbook, we had proof when we picked up each family and that it was in fact a official registered charter, which also has to be coincided checks and balances with the flag state of the vessel to make sure that we don't go... We were only allowed to do 12 charters per year under that certain flag. So I had 3 ways of proof to show to them, hey, we were chartering because that year we made a lot of tip money, and I'm guessing SARS wanted a piece of the pie. But sorry, guys, you made the rules and I fall under the exemption.
Exactly. So documentation is your best friend because you prove to SARS, the evidence is there, they will accept.
Then next up, last night I put on my Instagram poll story, hey, tomorrow I'm talking with a tax expert, hit me with some questions. Very common, and I think you're aware of this video that was circulating with Money with Carla.
Yes.
Where a tax practitioner mentioned that our tips are taxable.
Yes.
That caused, I think, 142 people sent me that reel on Instagram saying, oh my God, what
me too.
So let's talk about that. Where are we at with regard to tips?
So I think on that note on the podcast, I think there was more context to that, I would assume, to have, been that scenario. But based on my understanding, tips, let's just backtrack here. Okay, so we'll start at the beginning. Okay, what is the definition of gross income? Any amount actually incurred, okay? So basically any money that you earn that is in exchange for goods and services, if you can say it like that, is taxable by SARS, okay? But so a salary and a bonus, those are obvious ones. What if, but then people say to me, no, but tips are gratuity. It's a donation, okay? But SARS, interpretation of SARS, similar to a waiter. they have said that, no, you are getting your tips because of your job. Therefore, it's part of the amount of money that you are receiving for your job. Okay.
Part of your total compensation.
Yes, your compensation. It's tips, it's salary, it's bonus, it's leave pay, whatever it is. If you get given, even if you get given a car for your work, that car is taxable by SARS. Technically, it's anything in exchange for your goods and services. Okay. But yes, most of the time it's for yachties. It'll be bonus, tips, and salary. Okay. So that is SARS, basically income tax. SARS, they make it taxable. Okay. But let's not talk about the exemptions. Okay. The exemptions make your salary and your tips non-taxable. Okay. Both of them. Okay. Foreign employment or expat exemption, as long as you meet the requirements, your salary and your tips are non-taxable. And your seafarer exemption, your salary and your tips are non-taxable. Okay. So as long as you meet the requirements of the exemptions, of either exemption, your salary and your tips will be non-taxable by SARS. Obviously, for expat, there's a roof of 1.25 billion, but yeah. So
okay, that's great. Yes. So let me see if I understand this correctly. I am a deckhand. I earn 1.25 million rand per year, which puts me pretty much on the cusp. This is my salary. Okay.
Yes.
I work on a boat that does certain owner trips where his buddies come and use the boat. And then because they don't pay him, he just tells them, hey, take care of the crew. Okay? Very common thing in yachting. So we do a few of those trips per year. These guys are pretty generous and they end up tipping me an additional 250K for the year, putting me at 1.5. Yes. My 1.25 is exempt because of the expat exemption.
Yes.
But the 250K on top of that is taxable.
Is taxable, correct. Okay.
Gotcha.
Correct. So that is taxable by SARS.
But now I'm a deckhand earning the same pay, 1.25 million, but I can prove to SARS that I work on a commercial or charter vessel. Now my 250K worth of tips is non-taxable.
Non-taxable, fully tax exempt.
Okay, wonderful. I understood. Awesome. Thank you. That's a clear explanation. Then, how people that have not been on top of it, okay? And there's a lot of them. I've sent about a dozen to you in the past week alone.
Yeah, you have.
People that have traditionally believed that I'm a yachty, I don't have to pay tax, I thus don't even have to do anything. I can just go exist.
Yes.
Those that now are listening to this podcast and realizing, oh, we're folk, I need to backtrack some of my stuff because I am not compliant.
Yes.
How do they go about that? Are there penalties to be paid?
Okay. So, yeah, let's talk about it. Two types of penalties, all right? So there's something called admin penalties. So let's talk about the admin penalties first. So let's have an example of a yachty who's 5 years late. Let's say it's 5 years late. And just by the way, a lot of my clients come to me late. So we've dealt with it before. We can get you through relatively unscathed. But let's just talk about what can happen if things go wrong. Okay, especially if SARS found out. If you come to SARS and you submit your taxes before they find out, they're a lot more chilled. If they get a whiff that you have undeclared income, bad news. They can come after you hard. They can start slapping penalties, interest. Essentially, okay, well, let's dive into the types of penalties, okay?
Okay.
First is the admin penalty. Okay, so the admin penalty is based on your obligation to file your tax returns, okay? So basically, when do I become liable to submit my taxes? And the answer is if you're an SA tax resident, which is most yachties, it's when you earn income, okay? So obviously, if you earn income, you are liable to submit your taxes to SARS each year. Yeah. Okay, so that's the premise. And if you miss the deadline, okay, SARS has the right to charge an admin penalty of 250 Rand for each late tax return for every month that it's late, up to, I think, 34 months. And the minimum penalty is 250 Rand. I think the maximum penalty is 16,000 Rand. It all depends on the amount of tax payable or whatnot. In practice, what I have found that if a yachty comes to me and we submit all their taxes in one go, including the previous years, the maximum SARS charge them is 250 Rand per late tax return. Okay. So in practice, let's say it's four are late, one is on time. 250 times 4 is 1,000. Okay. So in terms of admin penalties, relatively unscathed. Obviously, if SARS get a whiff that, you are late, they can technically charge 250 Rand for each month since the missing due date, and even more if there actually is tax payable.
Capped at 16, but that specific penalty is capped at 16,000 Rand.
So it's 16,000 Rand. So it's 250 Rand up to 16,000 Rand a month.
Okay.
So that can be 16,000 Rand a month, worst case scenario. You late for 1 month, August, 16,000. You late again, 16,000. But
wow.
But in my experience, because yachties, most of the time they do pay little to no tax because they meet the exemptions. The penalties they get for admin penalties is 250 Rand. Technically, it can be per month since the submission date, but in practice, I've seen it's only 250 Rand for each late tax return.
Okay.
But yeah, so just to backtrack there, the admin penalty can range from 250 to 16,000 Rand for each month that your tax return is late. And I think it's a maximum of 34 months from that. I think then that is the cap. But as I said, in practice, it's mainly, in practice, it's mainly been 250 Rand for late tax return. We submit them all in one go. So it seems to be, that's at the moment. That's what's happening in practice. Okay. Now let's talk about the second type of penalty. Okay. So there's something called a late payment penalty or an underestimate penalty. And this basically is for provisional tax. So in South Africa, are you a provisional taxpayer or not? Okay. If you are a provisional taxpayer, SARS wants you to contribute your tax during the year. They don't want your So let's just quickly talk about the dates of a tax year, okay? So tax year starts in March and it then ends in February, okay? Then 4 months later in July, following year, that is when tax season opens. So in July 2026, from July 2026 is the filing season for the previous tax year, which is March 2025 to Feb 2026, okay? Then for salaried employees, you have until October, 23rd of October. Then for provisional taxpayers, you have until January, 20th of January, plus minus there. Mm-hmm. Okay, so are yachties provisional taxpayers, okay? And technically, if there is any tax payable, so for a person to be a provisional taxpayer, for a person not to be a provisional taxpayer, they need to be earning a salaried income, and that salary and the employer must be registered for pay as you earn in South Africa. Okay. So if your employer, which obviously for yachties are foreigners who aren't South African tax registered, they then by default become provisional taxpayers. Okay. So therefore what happens is because you are by default a provisional taxpayer and you didn't pay your tax during the year, SARS can slap you with a 10% late payment penalty and up to 20% underestimate penalty. But the underestimate penalty can actually, there's like a range of percentages as far as I understand. 10%, 20%, 50%, 100%, and 200%.
That percentage is based on what? 10% of what?
10% of what tax you should have paid. Okay. Gotcha. So if you are someone who's, yes, on your taxable income. So if you meet the requirements of the Seafarer exemption, you're not paying any tax. So 10% times 0 is 0, 20% times 0 is 0. You get off scot-free. You pretty much just have to, you just have those admin penalties. Yes. Now, let's talk about someone who has to use the expat exemption and they earn over 1.25 million Rand and they have tax to pay. Okay? So let's say there's 100,000 Rand tax that they need to pay. Okay, so an underestimate penalty it could be 20% times 100,000, which is 20,000 Rand. A late payment penalty is 10% times 100,000 Rand, which is 10,000 Rand. Mm-hmm. And let's not forget about SARS love their interest. They can charge interest on top of that. Okay. But most of the time, and also even if there is a bit of tax to pay or penalties to pay, best to just get it done. There's nothing worse than worrying about the taxman coming after you. And promise you, if the taxman comes after you, you don't want that. Rather avoid it. And most of the time, you do get people who avoid paying tax because they have a lot of tax to pay. In terms of yachties, the tax or penalties that you may need to pay in relative to your income is quite a little bit. It's not that much. Even if you're making 3 million Rand and you need to pay let's call it 500,000 Rand tax because of the expat exemption or maybe more, relatively, just pay it, get it done, pay your taxes, be compliant, be a South African citizen, pay your taxes, get it done, just so you can move on with your life,
Yeah.
and not have that burden. Because not paying your taxes or not filing your taxes is like just kicking the can further down the road.
Yeah.
They will come for you, be it 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or when you die. When you die and you have never submitted your taxes, before your children get paid out your inheritance, SARS will say, oh, wait, he needs to pay his tax first.
Yeah.
So just get it done, the sooner the better. And obviously, you go to a tax practitioner who knows what they're doing, be looked after, be advised also on how you can, be tax efficient and get the documents and get your tax in on time, and you pay little to no tax. Yeah. So that's kind of my comments there.
That's great stuff. And look, yachties, I was the same. And like South African yachties specifically listening to this, there's kind of the common consensus in the industry where like, why do I have to pay to a society that objectively probably doesn't use the money as they should? And I'm not there. I'm not like using your roads or using your infrastructure. Like, why should I be paying? But once it comes to like applying for mortgages or registering a business of your own back home, or really kind of ramping up your footprint as a wealthy or wealth-prone individual, that's when SARS comes and gets you. And that is why I advise, especially the young guns that are just starting out and like hearing all the things from the older captains of like, open a Standard Bank offshore and they'll never find you. Guys, the world's a bit more sophisticated than that. You don't need a South African bank account for them to determine this guy's making money somewhere. And yes, a lot of administrative functions back home are completely dilapidated and unreliable. SARS, if they want to, can be as efficient as the FBI. Trust me.
Yes, and they are. I just say, come to Cape Town. Things are working here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is this hard thing. I mean, I heard a podcast the other day. Tax morale in South Africa is low, but that isn't a reason to not pay taxes or file your taxes, because SARS hold the power at the end of the day. It's the taxes are meant to be for helping the country, right?
Yeah.
So in theory, it's you pay your part to contribute to the helping of others.
Yes.
What the government does with it is a separate thing. But yeah, so that's obviously the theory behind we even pay tax in the first place. And yeah, but you don't want that tax man to come after you. So just pay the taxes, be law abiding, and sleep peacefully. Trust me, you don't want to sleep. You don't want to worry. You don't want to sleep with anxiety. Who wants to sleep with anxiety?
Yeah.
And yeah, that tax man will never find me. They can and they will.
They will, like Liam Neeson. Yeah. I will find you and I will kill you.
I will find you.
Okay, so I've noticed that we are going to have to do a part 2 because I have 2 pages left of questions and I have to go to work. So we are going to have to call this a part 1. Which is kind of cool because it means we have a lot more to tap into.
We have so much to talk about.
You are a wealth of knowledge on this front. And I think it's kind of a good place to stop right now because people can really absorb what we've just discussed. And I will be sure to put a link to make contact with Jamie and his firm in the show notes of this first episode. So everyone, I really highly recommend him. Everyone that I've spoken to that has worked with him before have wonderful things to say. And really, for a small fee for people to do your tax returns and make sure you're in good standing with SARS, that is the best investment you'll ever make when it comes to your taxes. So I really thank you for your time and for being so thorough, and for you have a really good ability to take complex terminology and break it down into layman's terms, which is dope and exactly what I need on the show. Thank you. So I look forward to part 2. And if there's anything you want to finish off with and let the listeners know, let it rip.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Charl. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, guys, well, maybe just a little pitch from my side. You come to me and my team, we look after you. There definitely may be cheaper tax practitioners out there. You want to be left in the dark, maybe not to badmouth other tax practitioners, but come to my team. You are a VIP. We walk you through the process. All the homework you need to do is gather your documents. We compile everything. We negotiate or fight with SARS on your behalf. Our job is only done once you have that green tick and your taxes have been reduced to as legally as low as possible. Then, that's when my job is done and my team is done. Then another thing I want to mention is your documentation, guys. That is your best friend. If you know you're on a charter vessel and you're leaving it soon, get the evidence that you can from the captain. Get that certificate that it's a charter vessel. Get your documents in order. That is the best thing I can do. Keep your passport safe, your pay slips, file everything. Keep it safe. Don't be in a situation where now SARS is after you. The first 2 years of yachting, you've lost all your documentation. You can't prove a thing, but SARS can see your bank account or they can see that you're earning money and they say, you can't prove it to us, pay your tax. So keep your documents safe, if I can leave it at that.
Great. That's great stuff. I really look forward to part 2. Let's lock it in for next week once we're off air. And I'd love to keep this train going and really, yachties, just do the right thing. It's just death and taxes are unavoidable. So might as well get your butt into shape sooner rather than later.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Charl, it's been a pleasure, man.
You too. Thank you, Jamie. Thanks for everyone listening and see you guys.